Welcome to the third APA tutorial on punctuation. There are APA guidelines of how spacing and punctuation work together. You should put a single space after commas, colons, and semicolons. Some periods also have a single space after them, like periods on the references page, which are explained in further detail in a future tutorial. Periods in initials, as in the example it is D period space K period space Miller, and periods after titles like Dr. and Mr. also have one space after them. There are no spaces after periods in abbreviations like AM when talking about time, or US for the United States, or IE when you give an example. There are no spaces after colons either when they are used in ratios, like 4:1 or 3:2. APA dictates that there are two spaces after punctuation at the end of a sentence, like a period, question mark, or exclamation point. Although it is acceptable in many venues to use one space between sentences, APA explicitly states that you need two spaces between sentences. If your habit is to put only one space between them, this can be a hard habit to change. Many people use the find and replace function of Word to change a period with one space after it to a period with two spaces after it, as an example. If you are interested in using this, you should Google how to do this. However, it will also change things to double spaces in your references, initials, and after titles, which should be single-spaced, as described earlier in this tutorial. Therefore, if you use find and replace, you must proofread the spacing to make sure it only changed it where you wanted it to. There is a better way to set Microsoft Word to check for single spaces between sentences. The way to alter this setting is open Microsoft Word and then click on the File tab at the top left. Then click on Options near the bottom. Then you will click Proofing on the left side and then Settings next to the writing style. The default setting of checking the spaces required between sentences is usually Don't Check. Click on the drop-down and change this to the number 2, and then click OK. Once you have changed this setting, it will not automatically correct single spaces. It will underline single spaces between sentences as part of the grammar check. It does ignore titles and initials, which makes it a better solution than find and replace. In the example, it does not underline between the first two sentences because there are two spaces, but it does underline between the second and third sentence because there is only one space between them. You'll notice it does not underline the single space after Dr. or after Jr. This setting will incorrectly highlight single spaces on the references page, as in the example. You'll see underlines before the book title and the publisher information. The important thing to note with this setting is that it does not automatically correct the single spaces that are underlined and need changed. You will need to go and add extra spaces to them in order to properly follow APA guidelines. When you list more than two things, you use commas to separate them. APA specifies there should also be a comma before the and or at the end, although many styles do not require this comma. This last comma is called a serial comma or the Oxford comma. The first example shows the comma before the word and the second example shows the comma before the word or. These last commas are required by APA. You will use quotation marks in your assignments when you are using someone else's exact words. Double quotation marks are used in regular sentences, as in the example below. There is an exception if you do a quotation that is 40 or more words. This is called a block quotation and does not use quotation marks. You can see in the example from Purdue OWL there are no quotation marks, but there is some special indentation and formatting requirements. Please see APA 6.03 in the manual for the formatting requirements. There are a few times you use single quotation marks instead of double. One of those times is within double quotation marks. If the original text uses double quotation marks around a phrase, when you cite it, you are already using double quotation marks for the quotation, so you will change the double from the original text into single quotation marks in your paper. The same occurs with block quotations. If the original text had double quotation marks around a word or phrase, you will change that to single quotation marks within a block quotation. Lastly, please note that punctuation and references can differ from the punctuation guidelines given in this tutorial. Please see the tutorials on in-text citations and references pages and APA Chapters 6 and 7 to learn more about punctuation in your references. This concludes Tutorial 3.